What makes a real New Yorker? If a pigeon has shat on you while living in New York City, you're officially a New Yorker. People who are not real New Yorkers will literally be going to the club in blizzards. They'll be riding city bikes in the pouring rain. I don't know, I feel like I'm gonna make some people mad with these videos. That's probably why Lil' Kim was doing this. Hey y'all, it's Thomasina. Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new, thanks for tuning in. So I'm back again with another New York City Q&A video, but with a little twist. So I recently stumbled upon a BuzzFeed article titled 29 questions people have about living in New York that people in New York will think are funny and cute. I don't know how cute real New Yorkers would find these questions, but I did have a laugh while reading this article, so I figured I would answer some of these questions for you guys. I don't know if I would consider myself, or I don't know if other people would consider me a New Yorker. I consider myself a New Yorker. New York is running through my veins. It's in my blood. I was born here. I will rep New York until the death of me. And it's so funny, when I first moved out of New York when I was younger and moved to North Carolina, I made it my business to make sure everybody knew that I was from New York, that I was not from North Carolina. I didn't have a Southern accent. I was different. My style was different. My lingo was different. I made it my business to make sure everybody knew that I was from New York, and it was a big thing being from New York and North Carolina. Like, people just looked at you like you were different. Granted, some people found New Yorkers annoying just because our personalities tend to be a little bit bigger, and I mean, New Yorkers definitely like to let you know that we're from New York, but it's different for people who have lived in New York for their entire lives. So to some people, I am just, I guess, an expat per se, someone who is fairly new to the city, which I am, but I think because my roots are from New York, from Brooklyn, most of my family is from New York. I still have family here. I was still brought up by people who have the culture of New York City like embedded in them, and so I feel like that's always just going to be a part of who I am. So I don't know if I would be considered a real New Yorker. Most people would probably say no, but I am going on 2 years back in New York City, and I absolutely love it, and I don't care what anybody has to say. I'm always going to be repping New York. As you can see from my crew neck, what classifies you as a real New Yorker? Some people say if a pigeon has shat on you while living in New York City, you're officially a New Yorker. If you've had the AC water drip on you during the summer, you're officially a New Yorker. How long do you have to be living in New York City before you're considered official? I don't know. That's the first question. My answer? I don't know. Drop it down in the comments. What do you guys think? How long do you have to be living in New York City to be considered a New Yorker? What do you have to do? Is there some kind of test, some kind of trial? What classifies you as a real New Yorker? So with that being said, let's jump right into these questions. Question number 1. Do people in New York City say cheese pizza or plain pizza? I've always heard cheese pizza. I think children maybe say plain pizza because they don't know any different. That was a dumb question. This one was funny to me because this is something I experience quite often, but someone asked, how do people in New York City handle falling in love with strangers every day on the subway? You guys, I honestly fall in love with a new guy on the subway at least once a week, and it's tough, especially when you guys don't get off on the same stop. Like, my heart just breaks a little inside because you'll probably never see this person again. I think New York is just a city full of attractive people. Someone asked, how do people in New York City grocery shop? Y'all be carrying all that ish around on the train. Not I. Y'all know I order my groceries on Instacart all day, every day. I'm an Instacart advocate, but most people utilize the granny cart. I will show you guys what it looks like. I have one. I bought one when I first moved back to New York City because the grocery store was like 2 blocks away from my apartment, so I thought I would be doing my own grocery shopping. But after a good 2 weeks of pushing that granny cart around and going into the grocery store, and then the pandemic hit, I was like, oh no, absolutely not. You will not catch me in a grocery store. But most New Yorkers do utilize the granny card. But I also think a lot of people are ordering their groceries these days, which is cool too. But if you don't have a granny card and you're doing your own grocery shopping in New York City and you're actually like carrying your bags, brava, because I could not. Absolutely not. Not in the winter, not in the sweltering heat. Not for me. Do people in New York just like never use the restroom when they leave their homes? That's an interesting question. What do people in other cities do? I mean, I personally do not like using public restrooms anyway, unless I'm like at a restaurant or like at a club, like at an actual facility. I would think that most people would try to avoid using public restrooms, but it depends on where you're going. Like if you're just out and about in the city, then you're probably gonna wait until you get home to use the restroom, depending on how bad you have to go. But if you're going to an actual location, like going to the doctor's office, going to the movie theater, going on a date at a restaurant or something, those places have restrooms like any other place. Like I don't see how that answer would be different for any other city. That's interesting. Okay, so this is a good one, and I'm gonna answer it from my perspective. This one says, do people in New York really go out as often as they make it seem in movies and TV shows? From my experience, as far as like clubs and like bars and stuff like that, most of the people that are going out to those places every single weekend are people who are not native New Yorkers. I feel like native New Yorkers probably get together and they're like intimate friend groups. They probably go to house parties and do like low-key stuff like that, but they're not at the club partying every single weekend. But I feel like, at least from my experience, what I've seen in these clubs, at least in Manhattan, the people who are there every weekend, partying every weekend, going out every weekend, are people who are not like originally from here, not native. People who are not real New Yorkers will literally be going to the club in blizzards. They'll be riding city bikes in the pouring rain, like riding city bikes to the club in freaking tornadoes. Like I feel like real New Yorkers don't do stuff like that. Like we are fine in the crib. Like we don't have to be on the scene all the time. Like that's what I think. If you guys think differently, let me know. But from my experience, that's how it seems. That's how the vibes differ as far as like going out all the time. I don't know. I feel like I'm gonna make some people mad with these videos, the way I'm answering these questions, but feel free to let me know if you feel that I'm wrong, because I probably am. Someone said, do people in New York just casually go diamond shopping on Tuesday mornings? I don't understand the need for all these diamond stores. There are so many jewelry stores, period, in New York. When I was younger, all of us decked out in gold, decked out in just all kinds of jewelry as kids. Like everybody had a nameplate, real gold chains, real jewelry and everything. And it was just because buying jewelry in New York was significantly cheaper than like any other place back in the day. Nowadays, the prices have skyrocketed. I don't know if it's like a supply and demand thing or just like people with more money are moving to the city, so they know that these people will be able to afford it, and so they've jacked up the prices. Kind of like gentrification. You are changing the way these neighborhoods look to draw the attention of people in a higher class or higher tax bracket, the people that can afford these places. They're coming in, and then the prices of real estate are going up because these people are willing to pay for it. But the natives who can't necessarily afford these higher prices are being pushed out. I don't know how I got into that subject, but the same with the jewelry. Like, yeah, jewelry used to be a big thing for native New Yorkers like back in the day, just because it was so much cheaper to buy it here. But I think nowadays the people that you see buying diamonds every weekend and stuff, they're not native New Yorkers. They're just people who have established placement here in New York. They have money, they want to spend it, so they're buying diamonds every weekend. But it's definitely not like a normal thing. It's just the people who have money do things like that. Yeah, I don't think that's a trait of native New Yorkers, at least not these days. It's just people that come into the city that have money. Why do people in New York think it's a flex to ride the subway and not hold onto the poles? Because it is a flex. Have you tried to ride the subway without holding on to anything? Like, I see, that's probably why Lil' Kim was doing this. This was her reenactment of riding the subway without holding on to anything. I see why Subway Surfer is a game. Like, doing that, it takes skill. So that is definitely something to brag on. That is a flex, girl. Try it. Try it. Do people in New York hang out with friends more than other people, or does TV give the false impression that people in New York hang out with their friends all the time? For me personally, I will say that it's different than how it's portrayed on TV, but that's simply because I don't have any friends in the city, so who am I gonna be hanging out with besides myself? And honestly, I feel like a lot of people struggle with like depression and like social anxiety. I personally don't suffer from any of those things. I'm just an introvert and I'm very, very picky about who I surround myself with. But based on like social media and like people speaking out on these issues, it seems like a lot of people suffer from like depression and social anxiety, and because of that, they actually don't like hanging out with a lot of people and usually spend most of their time by themselves. So I don't think that the portrayal of friendship and hanging out in these TV shows like Gossip Girl and Sex and the City are realistic. Not saying that people don't hang out with their friends, but literally in Sex and the City, they were having brunch dates like every day. Who has the time to do that? I feel like in New York, we're all so busy. We're all so focused on our own lives. We're all out here trying to make it. Nobody has time to be going to brunch every day. I just finished watching Sex and the City reruns, and they legitimately met at that little cafe like every other day. And I was like, oh, I wish I had a friend group like that, but it's not realistic. So for me, that answer would be no. Would be nice to have, but realistically speaking, I think we're all just too busy and too caught up in our own lives to spend that much time with our friends. We do hang out, but I think the way that it's portrayed in media and like TV shows and stuff is a little bit extreme. This is a good question, because before I moved up here, I was like so confused as to why these girls still looked fashionably fabulous in 30-degree weather, because I'm like, what the freak? I just want to put on my big puffer coat, a scarf, a freaking cap, and gloves, and Uggs, and just look like an abominable snowman. Like, there's no way I can make this look cute. So someone asked, what do people in New York wear when it's 41 degrees? Is that cold to them? Is it acceptable to wear a big jacket? I need to know. I need to know too, bro. I really need to know. So, since living in New York, again, for 2 years now, when I first moved here, 41 degrees was freezing to me. It was absolutely unacceptable. I hated it. Like, I wanted to move away. But after being here for 2 years, I get excited when I see 41 degrees, at least in wintertime. Like, I'm hyped. Like, I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna be that cold. I'm probably gonna be, if I put on my big coat, I'm probably gonna be sweating. So I think the longer you live here, like, you get used to it, you get accustomed to it. Now, 18 degrees, because we've been having a couple, like, 20-degree and lower days. Those days, like, it is legitimately cold, and, like, obviously it's fine to wear your big coat. Honestly, it don't even matter. If it's 50 degrees outside, if it's 60 degrees outside and you're cold and you want to wear your big puffer jacket, do that. No one cares. Nobody's going to be paying attention to you anyway. But I will say, I don't think that 41 degrees is like freezing to most New Yorkers. Like, it's cold. Obviously, you're going to put on a jacket. But I think when it gets to like 20 and below, that's when we're like, okay, like, it's too cold. You're doing the most. Like, it's not even that deep. You don't need to be this cold. So, but if you're cold, wear your puffer jacket. Like, we don't care. This is so funny. Like, in North Carolina, there is a cutoff time on when wearing Uggs is acceptable and when it's not. So some people will bring out their Uggs when it's like 55, 60 degrees, and people in North Carolina would be like, oh no, like, it's too hot, girl. You need to put the Uggs away. Like, in New York, I feel like if you bring out your Uggs in 50-degree weather, like, nobody's gonna care. Nobody's gonna look at you sideways, because we're not really worried about other people like that. But in North Carolina, it's a no if you pull out your Uggs too early. Like, people are gonna be judging you for real, for real. Someone said, how do people in New York live without an in-unit washer dryer? Shaking my head. This why I can't move up there. No, in all seriousness, I am really thankful that I found a place that I absolutely love with in-unit laundry, but people make it work. You do what you have to do in the city. Some buildings have laundry like in the basement, and then some people just choose apartments that are in walking distance to a laundromat, and you do what you gotta do. Somebody said, why do people in New York love peacoats? Because they be fly. Like, what? Peacoats really just take your fall and winter wardrobe to a whole nother level. You guys, I did not get my first peacoat until like I think until my second year living back in New York City, and I just felt like a completely different person. I got way more compliments. I feel like my confidence was just, everything just skyrocketed, and it's just because it's fly, it's classy, like it makes you look like you got some business about yourself. Get you one. Somebody asked, do people in New York just hang out in coffee shops and reenact Friends episodes? Because that's what I like to imagine they do. I've never seen an episode of Friends, I don't think, so I not really making the connection, but a lot of people do spend time in coffee shops, especially now because a lot of people are working from home, but instead of being cooped up in your small apartment for hours on end, people just go to coffee shops instead of paying for like an actual co-working space. Just go to a coffee shop and clock in a few hours there. You get to mix and mingle with people, you get to be in a different environment, you get to get outside, get a breath of fresh air. It's much better than sometimes being cooped up in your apartment for so long. Oh my god, okay. Do people in New York really yell for taxis? Yes, they do. I have yet to hail a taxi in my 2 years of living in New York City. I'm honestly really scared to do it because I feel like I'm gonna be embarrassed if I try to call for one and all the taxis just pass me, because I see that happening all the time. Maybe that will be my goal for 2022, to hail a cab by myself, channel my inner Carrie Bradshaw. Do people in New York have block parties? Yes. And they're absolutely amazing. That's probably one of my favorite childhood memories, like when I was living up here. When I was younger, my family used to throw like these huge block parties, and it was so fun. I miss those days. Nowadays, they do have block parties, but unfortunately, a lot of violence erupts sometimes once alcohol is involved, and you know, during the summertime, people become agitated a lot easier. So there's definitely been a heightened occurrence of violence at these block parties and family gatherings and graduation parties and birthday parties and things like that. So that's unfortunate, but New York's block party scene is amazing, and I really think it's unmatched. And if people could just focus on the good vibes and the positivity and stop wanting to fight every second, I think that would make block parties even better. Oh, this is a good question. Okay, so do people in New York City have dogs, or are they more cat people? So I will say New York City has always, I feel like people in New York have always been more cat people, just because cats are they're less high maintenance, if that makes sense. Like literally you can get a cat when you need the affection from the animal, it's there, but it also does its own thing. It can use a litter box on its own. It doesn't need to be walked every 5 seconds. It doesn't need constant attention. And with the hustle and bustle of New York City and the small spaces that we do have, it is easier to keep a cat. However, I noticed that since the pandemic, a lot more people have gotten dogs, and so now it's just a mixture of cat people and dog people. I feel like the restaurants and stores and stuff are very friendly. They're very pet friendly, especially when it comes to smaller dogs. Like for example, in North Carolina, if I brought my small Yorkie in a Walmart or a Target or a restaurant, they would tell me to leave immediately unless it was a service dog. Whereas in New York, you bring your dog into the bodega, you bring your little puppy into the restaurant and have it sitting next to you while you're out having your outdoor dining meal or anything like that, and they're not going to say anything to you. They'll probably pet it. And a lot of these stores actually have little doggy bowls outside of the store filled with water and food, because they know so many people bring their pets and the dogs get hungry too. The dogs get thirsty too. So I think the city is definitely becoming way more dog friendly. You see a lot of dog parks. It's just becoming way more dog friendly. So I would say now it's a mix of both dogs and cats, but I think originally the city was more so a cat city just because they were so low maintenance, so you could be in the mix of the hustle and bustle of the city and your cat will still be alive when you come home, pretty much. This last question cracked me up. This person asks, do people in New York City wear shirts that say New York City on them? Guilty. Guilty, guilty, guilty. But honestly, I do see people wearing like New York City hoodies, New York hats. It's not like we're decked out and this stuff, but like there's a like a specific Brooklyn brand. I think it's called I forget what it's called, but there are a lot of small, specifically like black owned businesses that create this like New York paraphernalia or Brooklyn paraphernalia, like sweatsuits, hoodies, crew necks, and people will buy it and wear it and just rep it. I don't think it's necessarily seen as a tourist thing. My whole closet isn't just like New York City attire. We probably have like 1 or 2 shirts somewhere in our wardrobe. If we do have New York shirts, it's probably we bought it out of convenience or we bought it to support like a local New York City or like Brooklyn or like Queens or whatever brand that's like selling these kinds of things. But I feel like tourists more so buy it for like memorabilia or like fashion, whereas New Yorkers buy it just because we may have needed it at the time or like we're supporting someone's business. So that's how I think it goes. But you'll see a lot of people with like their Yankee caps and like the ball caps of New York symbol on it, New York Giants, all like repping their sports teams, of course. I don't think it's like,
ew, like you're not a real New Yorker because you're wearing a sweatshirt that says New York on it. Like, ew, like.
I don't think people care that much. But to answer your question, yes, New Yorkers do wear it from time to time, but like I said, it's not necessarily for fashion statement, it's more so just for convenience, I think. So those are just a few funny questions that I found on BuzzFeed. They are questions that you don't really hear asked too often on these New York City Q&As, but they still give you a sense of kind of like what real New Yorkers do, what are the habits of real New Yorkers, I guess. And I want to close it out by asking you guys, what makes a real New Yorker? How long do you have to have lived in New York to be considered a true New Yorker? Are only native New Yorkers true New Yorkers? I don't know. What are the qualifications? Because I need to know. I need to know. Am I a true New Yorker or not? So, I mean, I'm still going to rep it regardless, but I'm curious to know what you guys think, so let me know in the comments. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this funny little video. It was fun for me to do. I definitely got a few laughs out of it, but as always, thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye! 'Cause I'm not just a pretty girl.